started the 2018 season here at Erin Hills. We have our superintendent here, and last year he had a great big clock that would count down for the 2017 U.S. Open, and now we're down to 23 days, and Zach wants to reset that by about 45 days to try to get that part of the golf course back healthy. Our weather's seems to be, whenever I choose to put our dates for this event, it's always cold, it's always rainy, and but that's a good thing, because what else would we be doing today other than learning? And that's our goal today, is to get everybody to kind of learn about what's new to the property, learn about the staff that you're going to be working with, and obviously the expectations, because every year, especially after a U.S. Open, our phone calls have gone up from not just within our domestic U.S. borders, but across the country, across the world. And so those expectations of what they experienced or possibly saw on TV continues to rise. So we'll say some days your managers might be a little tough on you. We'll introduce all those managers to you right now, but they also have the best interest of the property for your safety and protection. And while you're here, some of you come from a long ways away as you start to learn who's here for the staff for this year. What I thought we would do is introduce the staff to you so that you can kind of get a name and a face. Each one of you have a brochure or a folder, and I'd like you to open that up. There's a number of things that you'll reference today. And a couple of things that we try to do is names to faces. So we'll pull that one out first, and I'm going to ask all of the managers to stand up and introduce themselves. It would be nice to know how long they've been with the property, so you get kind of a reference point and what their jobs and titles are. We'll say it a little bit later, but we have what we call an open door policy here. There's times when things maybe don't work out quite right, and you need to speak with someone else that is not directly supervising you, and we want to encourage you to do that, or even provide feedback. So hopefully those names and faces will help a little bit. Okay. So we'll start with Alex, and you can kind of we'll go around the room. So if you just want to turn around and just kind of look and see that face.
Alex Allister. I work in the accounting and finance department, and I've been here since 2014. Welcome, everyone.
We won't go in alphabetical. We can just go where you're sitting. Yeah.
My name is Justin Cordes. I'm the manager of the caddy department here. I've been here since the golf course opened.
Good morning, Tommy Krieger. I've been here since 2010, and I'm the property manager.
Morning, Jen Kroll, assistant manager outside services. This will be my second season.
Bobby Luxinger, assistant golf shop and outside service manager. Been here 3 years.
Good morning, Deb Schwind, manager of housekeeping, and this is my third season here.
Sue Wesky, housekeeping assistant manager. This is my second season.
Thank you. On the back.
I'm Kelly McHugh. I'm our reservations manager, and I assist Alex in the accounting department. I've been with Erin Hills since 2011.
All right, I won't talk like that, but I'm John Morissette, the competitions and marketing director here. I've been here since 2010.
Rich Tock, PGA professional ambassador to golf pros and corporate America around the country. Okay, 2009 when Andy purchased Erin.
Quentin Watson, been here since 2013, and I'm a small agent.
And group sales manager.
Yeah.
I'm Matt Test, I'm the director of food and beverage. I've been here for 8 seasons, so since 2011. I'm also shorter but better than myself.
They're attached at the hip all the time.
I'm Zach Reineke. I'm the director of course maintenance. I've been at the property since 2011.
I'm Jim Lombardo. I'm the head golf professional. I've been here since 2006.
I'm Anna Underper. I'm the events coordinator, and this is my
Robert and Steph. Introduction.
I'm Robert Feist. This is my 5th season here at Erin Hills, and I will be the golf shop manager for this upcoming season. Anything else?
No, not yet.
I'm Stephanie, Director of Hospitality Retail, and I've been here for 12 years.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Jake, you want to come in and say hi? Jake Sutter. Who are you? What do you do? And how long have you been here?
Jake Sutter, I'm the executive chef. I've been here 6 years-ish.
Okay. Good.
That's my story.
Let's give Jake a thanks because he's going to be preparing our lunch today. So thank you, Jake. I am curious how many first-year employees are with us, staff members? Wow, quite a few. Okay. Stand up if you've been here for 2 years or longer as a staff. Okay. 3 years. Keep staying. Keep standing. 3 years. 4 years. 5 years. 6. 7. 8. 9. All right. How long from the beginning? Well, you've got a great mix, so we have to help each other out, and that's hopefully what today will be about, which is to be able to kind of learn about the property a little bit more. I thought it would be fun to share what happened last year. It seems like it was a while ago, so let's see if this this little video can kind of bring the excitement back into the classroom here.
Ready for golf, Bunny?
We're so excited to be at the U.S. Open.
Thank you. Have fun at the U.S. Open today.
Thank you.
Welcome to round one of the 117th U.S. Open Championship.
Having a great time out here, you know, just all the fans and the crowds and the players that's all into this game.
Who are you rooting for, Eli, tonight?
Ricky Fowler.
Ricky Fowler. How about you, Mr. Luke?
Jordan Speed.
Jordan Speed.
Hello. Having a fantastic day.
Oh, I'll take that.
You know, I feel better. That's right where mine went.
All right,
That's
good.
use your club that you have to hit. You have to hit 6 iron.
A 6 iron. That sounded saucy.
So, lots of fun. Wondering if anybody's interested in sharing a little memory about their time, if you were a spectator or if you were working or a staff member here, about your experience with the U.S. Open. A little shy already. Kelly.
I may be a little bit obsessed with Rory McIlroy. I have been since he was a little chubby and had a fro. Probably going on because he's played in the Masters, 10 Masters. Watched Rory in the Masters for 10 seasons. So I had the pleasure of getting to meet him last summer. It was pretty special to me, and it was very special to a lot of other staff members too, which was really cool to see. A lot of people got kicks out of me getting to meet Rory as well. He showed up unannounced. To my knowing, they were going to warn me I had a Rory outfit picked out. Jim never told me he was coming over their radio. They're like, Mr. McIlroy's here. I was freaking out upstairs. Like, no way, Jim, you're supposed to tell me. I had an outfit. Shows up. It was really him. I was shocked. And it just so happened that I was like running around this building, like, where is he? And me and Steph were just chatting, like, right right about here, and Jim walks in with him, and it's like, oh, Rory, like you to meet Kelly. All is unknown from then. I don't quite remember what happened after that. We shook hands. He was very nice. Every time after that I saw him, I was asking Mr. Morissette, what can I tell him? What should I say? Give me a clue. How should he play hole 9? What should he do on 11? Give me some information so I can tell him something. So it's pretty special. And yes, I got to meet Rory.
Tell me about the bananas.
It just so happened that I think he was playing his practice round and stopped at the halfway house and maybe asked for a banana. We didn't have any out there. So got the call that Rory was asking for bananas, and who better to take him a bunch of bananas than me? He was calling me, get out there, Rory needs bananas. So I asked Matt, where can I find some bananas? The produce truck, like, literally had just got here with bananas. I probably took 11 bananas out of the whole 11. Got to meet him, interact. Again, give one of John Morissette's famous, you want to hit this shot further to the left than they think, and it shows you in your player guide, so that's the cue on hole 11.
Did he make the cut?
No. But 2018 is here.
Oh, good. All right, well, lots of memories. Hopefully we'll have some time more to share throughout the day. Introduce to you our General Manager, Andy Bush. So we've got a little bit of a kickoff for us as we start the season.
Great, welcome everybody. As those of you who've been here for a long time know, we're part of something really special. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, know that it's a really special place. It's a really special group of people. And it's also a place that you should really be able to enjoy. We've spent 10 years kind of focused on preparing for and executing a US Open, and we're one of 4 courses, new courses in the last 20 or 30 years to have that honor. And we had a wonderful Open, and I think we did it with grace, and it was a wonderful experience. This year, we're kind of saying, what's next, right? What do you do after a US Open? And for us, it's to refine everything that we've done, take everything that we've learned, and go the next step. And also kind of begin to build this as a business. It's a young business that we want to grow and we want to have thrive. And so we kind of re-looked at our mission statement, and we've produced these cards now for 4 or 5 years. I think we stole them from the Ritz-Carlton. You'll find at Erin Hills, like any good business, if we see a good idea someplace else in the hospitality business, we'll take that idea and incorporate it into our business. So you'll all get these and really read them and have them and think about them, because they are core to what we're about. And there's really kind of 3 legs to our stool that supports us this year. One is, we want to be a thriving business. We want to be a business that can provide great job opportunities, be around for a long time. We're not trying to create the most profit. We're just trying to have a little bit something left over at the end of the year. We have a wonderful ownership structure that allows us really to create a great business that isn't profit driven, but we would like to bring in a little bit more than we put out. That's our first kind of basic piece of the mission. The second is, we want to provide an exemplary guest experience. Our guests make our business, and they really are our business. And I think we do it as good or better than anybody in the country. And I think that that's really our competitive advantage here in Wisconsin when we compete in our business, is to give people just an unbelievable guest experience. They don't get that every place else. We're a little bit more intimate. We're a little bit more focused on the guest experience, and it really matters. So if there's something you can do to make a guest have a better experience each day, each moment, do that. That's what we're about. And the third thing is, this needs to be a great place to work if we're going to do that. If you're going to create a great experience for our guests, you've got to be having a good experience. And that's real, and it's really important. And I think you'll see it, especially for those of you who are new. Who's new here this year? Great. So everybody who's new, look around over the next month or so, and kind of the people that have been here, not just for 2 years or 3 years, but 5 years or 6 years or 7 years or 8 years or 9 years or 10 years. They're here for a reason. There's other places to work. And we want this to be a great place to work. And so we want you to learn from those people and understand why it's a good place to work. But I also want you, especially this new group of people, to make it a great place to work. Great places to work don't just happen. It's the people that are there that support each other. You know, we'll make some mistakes. We'll have a guest who'll be frustrated. Things don't always go right. Witness this spring. But we're going to make this a great place to work. And that really means all of us making it a great place to work. I'm going to say one thing about kind of workplace sexual harassment. We'll talk a little bit about it later. But we've been saying this for a decade, in that Erin Hills does not tolerate sexual harassment of any kind. That's who we are. That's who we've been. And the other thing that I'll add on to it, because you'll talk a little bit more specifically about it, but is our job is to give guests the best experience in the world. But they owe something to us as part of that too, in that they owe us politeness, all of us. We expect them to behave and be good guests on our property. And anytime a guest is not a good guest, and especially anything related to sexual harassment, but just not a nice guest, find your manager and tell them about it. Because I don't have a problem asking a guest to leave. I don't have a problem telling a guest that their behavior is not appropriate, because part of what allows us to have this great environment is everybody enjoying each other and being there together. And it's rare. It doesn't happen very often. But if it does, talk to your manager, find your manager, and they'll intervene and say something, because you shouldn't have to, especially if you're here for the first year or second year. But just know that that's our policy. I mean, and the bigger part of it is getting back to this being a great place to work, a great place to be part of. You should come here happy in the morning. Sometimes you should leave here tired at night. But it should be a nice experience, and the folks around you. And know that we expect all of you to be part of making it a great place to work and a great experience. So it's going to be a fun year. It's going to take a little while for things to turn green, but we're going to have a lot of fun. You're part of a great crew. Let's all make it a really wonderful 2018.
Okay, again, there's 2 cards. We do want you to kind of look through those, memorize them, and put them in your back pocket as you come to work. The reason we say that is because you're going to have so much information. These are the key points that we want you to learn and kind of memorize. On the front side of the card that Andy just talked about was our 3 pillars. Why we asked you to do certain things is because we want those 3 pillars to be of that success for us. Our mission statement is our focus. It hasn't changed since we've evolved with Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Bush as our managers and owners. And then on the back side, each one of you have what we call our credos. So again, when that focus starts to get tired, that's what we're trying to produce. I'm going to introduce John Morissette right now. He's going to come up and talk to you. On the second card is kind of our facts and our main points about making sure that our messaging and our information is accurate to our guests, because they're going to come to you, whether you've been here for 1 or 5 years, and ask for you to tell about the U.S. Open. So John's going to speak on that. And then on the back side of that card is just those important points throughout all of today that you'll get those most frequently asked questions.
All right, good morning. To follow up on what Chris said, while the focus of what we're going to talk about and what we're going to think about, plan for, and execute is the future of Erin Hills, and it's a very exciting future. We also want to be mindful of our past, and in particular of last year's U.S. Open, because one, we should take great pride in what we did in staging the first U.S. Open to be played in Wisconsin, and secondly, we want to be be able to converse with our guests about it. Because invariably they're going to have questions about the U.S. Open, and you know, there'll be some insight that we can add, some stories we can add, whether it's personal stories like Kelly, or what you know, what Jason Day did on the fourth hole, or this or that. You know, golf. You know, guests will enjoy hearing that and realizing that they're standing right where Justin Thomas was in the 18th fairway, and that, you know, they could tee up 100 balls and not get within 100 yards of the green probably from there. So with that, with the U.S. Open, first we'll take a little bit of a step back and say, you know, why did the USGA award the U.S. Open to Erin Hills? Because some of the grumpier guests we might encounter, you know, could say, oh, geez, why did the U.S. Open ever come here? This is in the middle of nowhere. Well, you say, well, sir, you know, it actually came here for these 8 reasons, or what have you, and that's helpful. So why did the USGA pick to come to this daily fee golf course in rural Wisconsin? You know, first and foremost, it's the quality of the golf course. As you all know, this is a special part of the state, the Kettle Moraine region, and that really lent itself to a natural golf course where very little earth was needed to build the course, and the architects were able to take full advantage of the natural topography. And it's rare to come across a course these days that's both a minimalist course in that not much earth was moved, but it's also big enough and long enough to be considered a championship golf course, and that is certainly what Erin Hills is. Flexibility of the course setup. You know, we have tees that range from 5,100 yards to over 8,000 yards, and that's important because, as you all know, this tends to be a breezy spot. So letting the USGA move the tees around each day depending on that day's weather conditions, especially the wind direction and strength, is important. The 15th hole here is a great example of that. In the 3rd round of the US Open, the USGA moved the tees up, and it was the easiest hole in the course, playing to an average of 3.51, you know, almost half a stroke under par. The next day, they moved the tees slightly back. They put the hole in a more challenging spot in the back right part of the green, and it was into the wind. And it became the hardest hole on the course with a stroke average of 4.51, exactly 1 stroke harder than the day before. So what a difference 24 hours makes. And again, that shows the flexibility that's built into the golf course that's so appealing to the USGA. Fine fescue. Erin Hills is one of the very few U.S. Open courses to be played with fine fescue fairways, which have a number of benefits, including the fact that weather permitting, which it didn't quite permit as much as we'd like last year, you know, it allows for a nice firm playing surface, which is something that you don't often get at a typical parkland tree-lined U.S. Open course. Likewise, similarly, we have the wind. As you know, we have only a handful of trees out on the property, so we're very exposed to the wind, and the wind does blow here. So that's an element that the typical U.S. Open course does not offer, that we can offer. Space for spectators and infrastructure. That our total size of our property is 652 acres, and as a result, the USGA had plenty of room for all the grandstands, concession tents, corporate hospitality tents on the course, but also a lot of room off the course. For example, they were able to park many, many more cars on site than they have at previous U.S. Opens, which is certainly a plus for them. Geographic variety. It is the U.S. Open, and the USGA makes an effort to move it around the country. But it just so happens a lot of the best sites happen to be on the 2 coasts. As you can see from this map, we're the only site between Pittsburgh and the Pacific Ocean. And that's part of the appeal, that the U.S. Open had not been in the Midwest since 2003 when it was at Olympia Fields in Chicago. So the USGA is very excited about bringing the championship back to the Midwest, to a key part of the country. Part of the appeal to the USGA for bringing the U.S. Open not just to Erin Hills but to Wisconsin is the support of the local government. That there have been some parts of the country, as you can imagine, where, you know, they aren't necessarily welcome with open arms, whereas here They have been, because the state of Wisconsin has seen the tremendous success of, say, the PGA championships at Whistling Straits, and they've seen what it meant to the local economy, to the state as a whole, for state tourism, and they know that supporting a national championship like this is not only just the right thing to do, but it's just good business, that both short-term and long-term for the state. And as a result, everyone at all levels of government was very supportive. Here's a picture of the Hartford Fire and Rescue Department, which was great, that oversaw fire as well as on-course medical services. And they were very busy. As you all remember, it was a warm week, and they had a lot of people with heat-related issues. But that the USGA has said afterwards that they've never seen so many different agencies, whether it's federal agencies, state agencies, county agencies, work so well together with really without any real clash of egos, as is often the case. All right, so that all that helps to explain why we hosted the U.S. Open. Now, what exactly was it like to host the U.S. Open? And here's some numbers. I apologize, the font's a little small, but just to put the scale of the championship in perspective. There were 9,500 players who entered the championship. They went through 2 stages of qualifying to whittle that down to the 156 who actually teed it up here in June. Number of volunteers, tremendous commitment, 5,300 volunteers for the week. Absolutely amazing support. And after, when volunteer registration opened in the summer of 2015, after just 3 weeks, the USGA had to go to a wait list policy, which again shows the enthusiasm and support of the people from in Wisconsin. Let's see, 120,000 plus volunteer hours worked. Absolutely amazing. So when we say that this could not have been staged without the volunteers, that's absolutely true. Could not have done that. They are absolutely invaluable. 200,000, more than 200,000 fans came here for the week, whether from Wisconsin, from Illinois, from Australia, from all parts of the world, came to here, Erin, Wisconsin, which is fantastic. I don't know if you saw, there's a great article on Golf Digest website during the championship that said, the title of which was, if you thought Disney World was the nicest place in the world, try Erin, Wisconsin. So that's great for Erin Hills, great for golf, and great for Wisconsin. You know, the Wisconsin Department of Tourism couldn't have paid enough money to get a headline like that. And we know that that's absolutely an accurate headline as well. Grandstand seats, 15,000 throughout the property. So that's almost one grandstand seat for every 2 spectators, because the USGA limited ticket sales to about 35,000 per day. So that's a lot of seats. And again, our property allowed for that. Without many trees and without space, that allowed for some fantastic viewing areas, whether on 9 or 18 or the smaller ones like by 4 green or 15 green. 26.5 million people. That's how many people watched the championship on television from all over the world. So you had people in Australia, New Zealand setting their alarms to get up in the middle of the night to see Holy Hill on TV. Pretty neat, pretty neat. 235, that's how many buses were used to transport spectators from the satellite parking lots to the golf course. And it went well. So it was always a case of the buses waiting for passengers rather than passengers waiting for buses. 442,000 number of pieces of U.S. Open logoed merchandise sold in the merchandise tent. The USGA was absolutely blown away by the demand for items in the merchandise tent. And for those of you who went here, remember that was quite a tent, about 39,000 square feet, and certainly felt a lot more like a department store than it did a temporary structure. Pretty impressive. 840 number of credentialed media from all corners of the world. 250 plus tents were constructed on the property for all in all shapes and sizes. for various needs, whether it's a first aid station or a corporate hospitality tent. 350,000 square feet of tenant space in the whole area. Think about that, 350,000 square feet of tenant space. Awful lot. And there we have a picture of Brooks Koepka with a number of the scoring volunteers afterwards. Now, what did the players think about Erin Hills? And for this, we owe, they thought very highly of it, and we owe a lot of this to the staff here. That those who were here last year remember that we asked for basically a social media blackout, both from a personal perspective until after the championship was over. Not to post any pictures of what the golf course looked like in May, not to take pictures with players or bombard players with questions, and it worked. What did the players think? They absolutely loved the golf course. Brooks Koepka, not surprisingly, said he liked the course. Jordan Spieth says it's an awesome course. I'm sure the Open will come back here. Kelly's future husband said the golf course is great. It really is. I'm a big fan of this place. Steve Stricker, in magnificent shape, probably the best conditioned golf course we may see in a major. Davis Love, the fourth, said the greens are perfect, some of the best greens I've ever putted on. Ernie Els, a two-time U.S. Open champion, said probably the best greens he'd ever putted on in a U.S. Open, which is an incredible testament to Zach and his staff, how without really any help from Mother Nature, they were able to produce the best conditioned golf course in U.S. Open history. Ricky Fowler said, it'd be great to see this course play firm and fast. It's a lot of fun to play. So on all fronts, it was a real success. Spectators loved it, the players loved it, looked great on television, and hopefully a lot of people in this room had fun there. Now, any questions about the championship? Okay.
As a teacher, assessment is always a part of our learning, and throughout the season, we actually will be putting out little department questions, kinds of question and answers like tests. So this is all being recorded. In your handouts is each one of these PowerPoints. We're not going to ask about how many square foot of tents, but who was our winner? What was the number of spectators that did attend? So those will help us kind of assess that we're all actually moving through the process. Okay. So introduce Zach Rankin. He is our superintendent.
Well, as Chris said, I'm Zach Rankin. I'm our director of course maintenance. As I said earlier, I've been here since 2005, which gives me a really interesting perspective on the golf course. I was here when it was originally constructed. I was part of the construction, I was part of the growing, I was part of the original owner that had Erin Hills, and then the transition to a new owner. And through that process, we made a lot of changes to the golf course, big improvements to the golf course, between adding cart paths, new tees, changing hole locations, new bunkers, new tee complexes. All those things made a big impact to just the general condition of the golf course, the quality of the golf course, and the culmination of that was hosting the Open last year. But I think from my perspective, I get a unique angle on understanding not only the golf course, but I see kind of the hospitality side of it. And I think before I get into my presentation, kudos to the hospitality side of it, because as we've made improvements on the golf course, just as many improvements happened here. And it's really attributed to Andy Bush and Chris Schoonover and the entire management staff up here. The improvements that we've seen in just how we handle guests and we treat guests, and the care that we give to every person that steps foot on the property is really what makes Erin Hills special. It's about the golf course, but it's about the experience. And a big part of that experience is what happens here. So kudos to everybody. So just a little bit of history. So I'm the director of course maintenance. I've got two assistants. John is kind of actually considered our associate superintendent. He's been with us for, I want to say 6 or 7 years now. Alex Biesencrone actually was here when I started as well. He was a staff member. He's been with us for almost 12 years. Staff member went back to school for turf and now is an assistant on the golf course. We've got an equipment manager, head mechanic Tim, and then our assistant mechanic. So that's kind of our management staff, and their pictures are all in there. This is just kind of some of the things that we're going to go through really quickly. You know, one of the things, we went through all the surveys at the end of the year, and one of the things that came up was, you know, what department would you like to know more information about? And the turf grass department is one that, you know, a lot of times we don't share the information. So wanted to make sure that people kind of understood kind of our philosophy and our maintenance practices, but just know that my email address is on that sheet. Now that we're kind of post-US Open, my flexibility is improved. So if you ever have any questions about the golf course, just questions in general, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. So as we go through these, you know, some of the credos that we kind of stand by is this idea of, you know, we want to make sure the conditions of the golf course are comparable to a US Open, where they would be consistent of what we experienced during the US Open. You know, and then we want to try to provide an experience where our guests don't necessarily see us. We try to stay in the shadows as much as possible. So we start early in the morning. We've got staff that comes in at 4 o'clock in the morning. We get all of our staff on the golf course by 5, with really the goal that the first couple of tee times never really have to see our maintenance staff. Now, there are times during the year where we're out there doing other projects, but the goal for us is really to kind of work around our guests so that they don't have to experience hearing engine on a mower or a backpack blower. They should come out here and there should be kind of a quiet, comfortable environment for them to enjoy the property. You know, I think this image is kind of changing over the course of the last several years. So there's a younger audience in here, but this is a great movie, Caddyshack. And I mean, that was kind of the impression of a superintendent, was, you know, kind of a jovial person that, you know, was more concerned about a gopher on the golf course than actually the conditioning of the golf course. But what you actually see in a facility like Erin Hills is, you know, we've got 4 managers. We all either have bachelor's degrees or associates in soil science or horticulture or turf grass. Penn State, UW-Madison, at Rutgers. We have a staff of 20 to 25 people that are kind of our, you know, this time of the year, late March, April, that goes all the way through the end of our season, which is usually around Thanksgiving. You know, we're still on the golf course. Then during that peak season, we have an additional 10 to 12 people. So we've got about 35 people to maintain the golf course. It's a very labor-intensive golf course to maintain. So it takes about 35 people during the season. We utilize a lot of science and technology to provide the best playing conditions. So you'll see guys probing greens with what looks to be kind of a tool with 2 points on it, and we're actually checking our moisture on greens. So we use a lot of technology to actually give us a competitive advantage against other golf courses, or just how to make the golf course as good as possible. So we lose a lot of kind of science and technology. It's not just a feel. We're not just out there mowing grass. There's a lot of science that actually goes into it. And then one of our big things, you know, John was talking about fine fescue, and we try to be environmental stewards. We've worked with organizations like the DNR, the Audubon Society, and, you know, we're concerned about the chemical inputs that we put on the golf course, and we want to make sure that we're restricting that as much as we can. We're concerned about the amount of water that we use on the golf course, so we constrict that and control that. So we want to lead by example. We want to be, you know, the golf course in the state of Wisconsin that kind of can show that sustainability is an option even on a US Open caliber golf course. So just some information about the golf course in general. So we've got about 4.5 acres of greens. That includes all 18 greens on the golf course, 2 putting greens, and two greens on our short game facility. We've got about 4 acres of tees as well. We've got 38 acres of fairways, and that's a lot. We've got big open fairways. As a comparison, a course like Whistling Straits, they've got probably 20 to 22 acres of fairways. So we've got a lot of acreage that we have to control, maintain. Primary rough, we've got about 15 acres. And then these unmowed fescue, that's the brown blowing grass that you see during the peak of the season. We've got about 155 acres of that. The practice facility, which encompasses both the putting greens, the driving range, the short game area, is about another 35 acres, and the club lawn, acre and a half. So that totals 253 acres of maintained turf. That's maintained turf. That's not just the property. The property itself is 650 acres. So 253 is a lot. If you think about Marion as an example of a U.S. Open golf course, I mean, they sit on probably 150 acres or less. That's their entire piece of property. We're 253 acres of maintained turf. So it's an example of how big this property is. Some interesting things about just the grass types that we have on the golf course. So we've talked about the size of the golf course, but now, what makes Erin Hills special? There's a lot of talk about the quality of our greens during the U.S. Open. Our greens are a bentgrass green. They're an A4 bentgrass green, which is it's a bred grass to be, improved over some of the older varieties. Some of the interesting things about it is it's able to handle mowing heights that are extremely small. So we mow greens at 0.090. And for those that might not understand what that means, if you took 2 dimes and stacked them on top of each other and squeezed them, that is the height of the grass that we mow on the golf course. So it's less than 1/8 of an inch. It's 2 dimes. Sometimes take 2 dimes or 2 pennies, and if you see that, I mean, it's incredible how low you can mow that grass. Excellent heat tolerance. It was actually bred from Augusta National. It's an interesting story, but several years ago, back in the mid-90s, there's a patch of bentgrass at Augusta that was just superior than anything else. And the superintendent at the time called up Penn State and said, can somebody take a look at this piece of grass that I have? And realized that it was actually this hybrid. So the grass actually comes from, the breed of grass comes from a green at the Masters, and they have now successfully bred that, and now that's basically the same grass that we have. So what you see at the Masters, that same A4 is the same grass that we have at Erin Hills. The only struggle with that is, it's coming from Augusta, so it's coming from a warmer climate. It has some poor cold tolerance. So in the springtime, especially when you have a spring like this year, greens are really, really slow to get kind of up and going. So this is just one of those interesting years for us that it's going to take us a while for greens to actually get up to the quality that we're accustomed to. We'll talk about this in not too much detail, but it's this kind of idea of form follows function on Erin Hills. So we've talked about our greens and our grass selection there. The fairways are fine fescue. The mowed rough is fine fescue. The native areas are all fine fescue. So it's all the same variety of grass. And what's unique about that is we're one of 3 courses in the state of Wisconsin that are fine fescue, and we're one of probably less than 20 facilities, maybe 30 facilities in America that are fine fescue fairways, primary cut of rough, and our native areas. And really, when Erin Hills was designed, it had this kind of concept of it being a link-style golf course, which link-style golf courses in the UK are synonymous for having fine fescue in their fairways. The other nice thing is it gives us the flexibility of kind of changing our fairway lines. So if we want to narrow a fairway down or widen a fairway before or after the Open, it allows us to do that because it's all basically the same grass. It's just mowed at a different height of cut. There's some slight changes in just the varieties, but for the most part, it's the same grass. However, there's a lot of limitations to it, and that's what we struggle with from time to time. And those kind of spawn from the concept of fine fescue needs really well-draining soils. And although we have some pockets of some glacial till and some sand, as John had said earlier, we're on the edge of the Kettle Moraine, which is basically where glaciers kind of retreated back, and we're left with these kind of undulations and these interesting forms on the golf course, but it gives us a lot of variety in our soil. So we've got some areas that are sandy, some areas that are clay, some areas that are silt, and the fine fescue prefers to be on sand. So Sand Valley up in Wisconsin, they're on 60 feet of sand, and fine fescue really thrives there. It thrives in coastal areas. On heavier soils, it struggles, and we have to fight that every single year. So it's not native to the area. It does not prefer these heavy soils that are found here. It's got poor traffic tolerance. That's why we're a walking-only facility. It's part of the aesthetic of us, and it's great to see, not to see a bunch of carts in the golf course, but the driving force to why Erin Hills is a walking-only facility is the reality that the fine fescue fairways can't handle cart traffic. And the more carts we would put on there, the worse the conditions would get. The advantages of it is it's a low input turf. We don't have to water it as much. We don't have to fertilize it as much. We don't have to apply pesticides as much. So it's part of that kind of environmental steward. There's some nice advantages to it. However, this is the problem. This is an area on the golf course, and we'll probably experience something very similar to that this year. Every couple of years, we run into a scenario where we get a combination of events that lead us to a lot of damage on the golf course. And those events are usually in a significant amount of rain, followed by really cold temperatures. And on February 20th, we had gotten over 3 inches of rain on the golf course. We had widespread flooding across the entire golf course. And by the next night, it was like 10 or 12 degrees. So as fast as we tried to pump water off the golf course, we just couldn't beat those cold temperatures. And by the second day, we just had blankets of ice across the golf course. That leads to a lot of death on the golf course, unfortunately. So rapid temperature changes, rain followed by freezing temperatures. We saw a lot of that this year, and what that's going to cause is what you see here. I mean, the first couple of weeks of the season are going to be a little bit of a struggle, and we're kind of aware of that. And I want to make sure that you guys are aware of it as well. That you all saw our pictures from the Open last year, the conditioning of the golf course during the Open last year. We'll get there again. We'll get there, but it might not take us, or it might take us until June. I mean, it's going to be, the first couple weeks in May are going to be a little bit of a struggle. So we need your guys' help from a maintenance perspective to at least understand what's going on, know that we're doing whatever we can to do it. But if you hear guests that complain or say, I thought, I saw these pictures of a US Open facility, like what had happened. This is what happened. It's 33 degrees outside right now. Last year we were mowing greens. We still have covers on greens. We still have snow in bunkers. We're going to get more snow potentially tonight or tomorrow. We had this kind of rain and freezing temperatures during our winter, which that's why we're in the situation that we are, unfortunately. Bentgrass golf courses probably wouldn't see that. So when you drive by Oconomowoc or Shaniqua or those courses as you're driving to Erin Hills and their fairways look perfect, fine fescue is more susceptible to this kind of damage. So when you drive by any of these other golf courses and you say, well, I don't understand, they look great and Erin Hills is still kind of, healing, it's because we're a different grass. And that's the reality to it. So just some really quick kind of maintenance practices. Our general philosophy and methodology is, we set the entire course up every day. So some things that are done kind of on a daily is we change our hole locations. It gives it a lot of variety to the golf course. The people that are playing kind of back-to-back days, they get a chance to see a different golf course. Tee service, kind of what John was saying earlier. We change the tee locations, we change our hole locations so that you might play hole number 15 and it would play easier the first time that you played it. The second time it could play entirely opposite of that. So we try to give some variability to the golf course. We mow greens every single day. We do our bunker maintenance every day, and then those just kind of random cleanup things are done every day. In addition to that, we've got additional proactive practices that are done during our season. So as much as we try to be kind of non-invasive to guests. There are some things that we have to absolutely do. We have to top dress, we have to airify, we have to fertilize, we have to do some of these things in the golf course. So that impacts the play. We just try to make sure that that's as constricted as possible. And then, as I already said, you know, our goal of kind of being out of sight, out of mind. You know, staff is starting at 5 o'clock in the morning, and usually is kind of off the golf course by 11 o'clock or noon. Some interesting things. I mean, for those of you that, you know, you're going to get those questions about, you know, have they airified greens? Are greens airified? I mean, that happens every year. A lot of golf courses airify their greens in the fall, and you start getting those questions of, you know, has Erin Hills airified their greens? Because they don't want to play on, they're not going to pay a premium to play in a golf course with airified greens. So we don't airify our greens during the actual golf season. We just do it in the spring prior to opening, and allows greens to heal up prior to actually having guests out on the golf course. However, they are top dressed and vented or verticut, and we do that on Mondays. And we try to keep that, as I said before, we try to keep that to a minimum so that we're not impacting our guests too much. We mow greens 7 days a week. We double cut 3 days during the week, and then we roll 4 days. And that combination of results gives us, you know, green speeds that are consistent of what a championship facility would be. So we say 10.5. I mean, it varies between what we're doing and our weather patterns, but anywhere between a 10 to, you know, an 11 is kind of where we want to be. You think about the US Open and green speeds were in excess of 13. That happens sometimes during the year, but this is usually the kind of consistent goal for us.